The Galactic Senate chamber echoed with the low hum of translated voices, dozens of species murmuring in the aftermath of the latest war report. The Zarn Dominion, insectoid predators with hive-driven tactics and brutal efficiency, had torn through 3 Imperial fleets in less than a solar month. Morale dipped. Resources stretched. Tensions rose. From the central platform, General Kael'tor of the Vagari stood clad in chromasteel armor, his 6-foot spined crest swaying as he raised his voice above the din. "The situation is deteriorating because we rely on weak links," he declared, his sharp fangs bared in contempt. "Weak links like the humans." A pause. The room quieted. "They have no war instinct, no hunger, no sacrifice. Their soldiers hesitate, their leaders deliberate. While our enemies strike with claws, humans negotiate with open palms." He paced slowly, his voice growing heavier. "They are cowards." Some laughed. Others nodded in guarded agreement. Even those who doubted said nothing. The humans were the newest entrants to the galactic stage, young, unrefined, and unproven. Their diplomacy-first strategy was seen not as wisdom, but fear. They had contributed little direct combat in the Zarn conflict, offering instead logistics, medicine, and intelligence. Support roles. Subordinate roles. "They should be reassigned," Kael'tor snarled. "Let them stick to farming moons and patching wounds. The battlefield demands blood. Resolve, not earthborn excuses." Behind the main platform, in the shadowed seating reserved for allied observers, a human in formal navy blue uniform sat expressionless. No insignia, no rank visible, just a calm, unreadable gaze beneath dark eyes. She didn't react, didn't blink, just watched. Kael'tor turned to her, voice raised, addressing not just the Senate, but the woman herself. "Tell your kind to stop pretending at war. Leave it to those born for it." Still, no reaction. The general scoffed, dismissing her with a flick of his clawed hand. He turned his attention back to the crisis maps. Outside the chamber, the Empire was dying slowly. The Zarn weren't just winning battles, they were adapting, growing bolder, learning how to bypass planetary defenses. Every week saw another colony gone dark. The Empire, once confident in its superiority, was feeling the sting of desperation. Still, the humans sent no battalions, no grand ships with superweapons. They remained quiet, offering tactical observations and minor drone support. The whispers began. Were humans truly unfit for real war? Were they parasites feeding off a crumbling alliance? Kael'tor's words became a rallying cry for skeptics. Cowards of Terra, they began calling them. War dodgers, peace peddlers. No one openly opposed the slander. Not even the humans. They simply listened. But while the rest mocked, a few noticed anomalies. Zarn troop ships mysteriously vanishing in deep space. Command nodes going silent. Entire outposts lost to internal failure, their systems hacked, their life support disabled. The Empire assumed it was lucky coincidence. They didn't think to ask who was responsible. The human observer returned to her diplomatic quarters on Station Axis 9. She entered a secure line, transmitting a coded phrase across a narrow quantum band. Stage 1 complete. Let them talk. No reply came. None was needed. Back on Earth, military planners watched the Senate session playback without sound. They didn't flinch at the insults. They didn't rush to defend their name. They let the Empire bask in its ignorance. That was the plan. They didn't need approval. They needed time. One analyst, eyes still on the screen, muttered to himself, "He called us cowards. Let's make sure he remembers it." The human woman aboard Axis 9 sat alone in her darkened quarters. She removed a ring from her finger, revealing a hidden interface. Scanning her iris, it confirmed her identity. Captain Elira Voss. Status: active. Clearance: Widow 1. She stared at the authorization code, then typed in a sequence. Final confirmation. Some wars aren't announced. Some don't require armies. Some start with a whisper in a Senate chamber and end with silence in the dark. She closed the interface. The countdown had begun. The order came through encrypted channels with no ceremony, just a single confirmation code flashing across Elira's display. authorization granted. Somewhere deep beneath Earth's political front lay the shadow operations that never made it into Senate reports or military archives. The ones that didn't require approval from galactic councils. Operations like Widow. While the Empire debated strategies and through insults, Earth prepared its own solution. Not fleets, not legions. Something much smaller, far more precise. Widow operatives were designed for situations where traditional warfare failed, where brute force would only get armies devoured. Humans hadn't been sitting idle while their allies bled. They had been planning their own lines of attack, calculated to strike where the enemy wasn't expecting it. Captain Alira Voss, a name unknown outside a handful of classified dossiers, was one of those solutions. Recruited after her unit was wiped out during an early Tsar incursion, she volunteered for a program that erased her from the records she once lived by. The official reports marked her as killed in action. The reality was much colder. Her life was stripped away so she could become a ghost in wars no one acknowledged. As the Empire's fleets floundered and their defenses crumbled, human intelligence identified the real source of the Tsar's growing might, a flagship deep behind enemy lines, serving as both hive control and command relay. Destroying it would sever communications, disrupt coordination, and stall their unstoppable advance. It was the heart of their war machine. No fleet could get close without losing half its ships before touching alien hull. Normal infiltration teams would be crushed under their shifting labyrinthine corridors, organic walls shifting like a living nightmare. So they sent one. Orders were simple. Infiltrate, sabotage the relay, cripple the flagship. Buy the Empire a chance at survival. Leave no trace of human involvement. Alira watched the mission data roll across her visor as her ship, a stealth insertion pod barely larger than a cargo container, glided silently toward the Tsarn vessel. No backup, no extraction plan until the task was complete. Success meant a fighting chance. Failure meant an anonymous death inside a creature's fortress. Status confirmed. The mission AI droned in her ear. Target proximity reached. Infiltration protocol initiated. Her breathing stayed steady. She had rehearsed this scenario in simulations designed to break lesser soldiers. Alien structures alive with hostile intent, corridors pulsing with bioluminescent veins, each corner an unknown hazard. But this wasn't a simulation. She removed emotion from the equation. There was only the mission. Alira's drop pod penetrated the organic outer layer of the flagship with a muffled vibration, biogel buffering her entry to avoid detection. As the pod shell dissolved, she stepped into darkness, a living hive that devoured conventional logic. Flesh walls twitched, sensing the intrusion. Cloaking engaged. Neural dampeners active. Step 1. Disappear. While the Senate spoke of human cowardice, Alira moved silently through corridors of living tissue and bone, mapping structures never meant for outsiders. She avoided the drone patrols. Zarn-foot soldiers fused to their ship, more parasite than crew, moving in erratic cycles only someone with weeks of pattern analysis would understand. Weeks her handlers had invested while the world called them complacent. She planted disruptors against organic energy conduits, devices keyed to rupture the nervous system of the ship in a cascading overload. Each placement required precision timing and nerve-wracking patience. One misstep would alert the hive. There would be no second chance. As she worked, she remembered her unit's final moments, hollowed out of their stronghold by the same breed of enemies that now crawled above her unseen. She remembered the promises of vengeance that never came, buried under diplomatic talks for peace while colonies burned. It wasn't fear that kept humanity cautious all this time. It was preparation. Now, caution had worn thin. They were ready to remind the galaxy what fear really was. The deeper she moved, the stronger the psychic pressure became. A dull ache at the base of her skull from proximity to the hive mind directing the fleet. It was worse than any briefings had described. A constant thrumming, like 1,000 voices whispering of conquest in a language built of violence. Others would have faltered. She embraced it, pushing past the pulses of pain, using it as confirmation. She was close. Final device armed. Relay control chamber ahead. No reinforcements were coming. No Senate was waiting to praise her actions. She was the knife slid between an enemy's ribs while their attention remained on distant battles and political theaters. If she succeeded, the Zarn flagship would become a tomb. If she failed, no one would know she even existed. She keyed her final transmission into the implant taped behind her ear, a phrase that would trigger the rest of Earth's covert strategy. One woman, one war. She severed the line. Silence returned as she readied herself for the final phase. The interior of the Zarn flagship twisted like a breathing organism, walls twitching with sensory fibers and heat-slick mucous membranes. Elira moved through the living corridors like a shadow, her suit adapting thermally, biologically, and orally to keep her invisible. Her every step was measured, precise. No wasted motion. No unnecessary effort. Each second counted. Each breath was a calculation. She bypassed drone patrols with ease. Too many blind spots, too predictable. Her neural link pulsed with data, movement patterns, chemical trails, power surges. The ship was more brain than machine, and like any brain, it had vulnerabilities. She didn't need to understand every function. She needed to find the pain points. She was halfway to the core when her first obstacle shifted. Not a patrol, a growth. It hadn't been there in the last 5 seconds. The ship was reacting. A hum rippled through the structure. Not alarm. Not yet. But awareness. Her presence was beginning to register. She drew a knife. No plasma. No sound. Just high-carbon composite, serrated with adaptive nanowire. A single incision across the exposed stalk caused it to curl and die. She moved on without pause. One less sensor. One more second bought. Elira reached the outer perimeter of the relay core. Here, the architecture changed, denser, thicker walls pulsing with protective signals. The heartbeat of the hive was deafening, vibrating through her bones. Beyond this layer was the relay mind, the intelligence coordinating Zarn fleets across multiple systems. Destroy it, and their cohesion would crumble. Destroy it, and the war would tilt. She pulled a small vial from her utility harness. Inside, a compound designed to exploit the Zarn's own biology, manufactured by Earth's covert labs, tailored from dead tissue samples gathered during observation missions the Senate never knew about. The compound wouldn't just disrupt, it would confuse, send false signals, mimic command pulses, and force disarray. She injected the canisters into a vein-like conduit branching off the main path. Seconds later, the passage ahead began to twist. Not in alarm, but in confusion. The hive mind was receiving contradictory instructions. That was enough. Moving fast now, Elira sprinted down the corridor, still cloaked but forced to take risk. The ship's confusion wouldn't last long. She reached the relay chamber, massive, alive, humming with neural electricity. No guards. None were needed. This was sacred ground to the Zarn. She knelt, opened her pack, and pulled the final charge. A gravitational pulse bomb calibrated to the resonance frequency of the Zarn's core synapse structure. Earth hadn't just studied their enemy. They had dissected them, tested them, understood them in ways the Empire never bothered to. Timer, 90 seconds. She stood and stared at the pulsing core for a brief moment. Not out of awe, out of calculation. Could she do more? The ship began to scream, not audibly, but psychically. The false signals had triggered instinctive defense reactions. Drones converged from every tunnel. Time shortened. She moved again, faster, planting secondary microcharges along key intersections. Not to destroy, just to stall. Confuse. Give the Empire time to strike when the hive flinched. With seconds left, her final task was clear. Make sure they never knew it was her. She uploaded a false energy signature into the relay, designed to mimic a collapsing Vagari power cell. When the explosion hit, the Empire would assume one of their own had sacrificed themselves in a desperate attack. That illusion would buy Earth time, protect their strategy, and keep their enemies blind. 30 seconds. Pain flared across her side as a spined appendage caught her in mid-motion. She spun, ducked, countered with her blade. 2 cuts. 1 kill. Her cloak failed. No time to recover it. 20 seconds. More drones rounded the corner. She hurled a stun pulse, scrambled their targeting nodes, and bolted back toward the insertion tunnel. They swarmed behind her, shrieking in ultrasonic rage. Organic limbs and acid glands sprayed across walls. She ducked another strike, slid under a collapsing support tube, and reached her original entry breach. 10 seconds. She activated the emergency burst in her suit. A kinetic shockwave flung her clear of the tunnel as the relay chamber detonated. Silence didn't follow. Screams did. Psychic, physical, ambient, all overlapping, deafening. She didn't look back. Her implant registered success. Target neutralized. Hive relay offline. She crawled into the secondary escape pod. A buried, acid-sealed cocoon built for one use, one person. It sealed as the flagship buckled and tore apart from within. She closed her eyes. The mission was complete. The cost accepted, and still no one knew her name. The Zarn flagship's destruction sent a cascading effect across their fleets. With the relay mind obliterated, every unit that had once operated with coordinated precision fell into chaos. Formations disintegrated. Orders contradicted. Some vessels turned on each other, interpreting Hive's silence as betrayal. Would have been an unstoppable tide of violence fractured into isolated, confused thrashing. For the first time in months, the Empire pushed forward without losing ground. Galactic Command attributed the event to a fortunate malfunction or perhaps a suicidal Vagari strike, consistent with the planted evidence. Kale Tor, unaware of the deception, claimed credit on behalf of his people, his voice booming in the Senate chamber as he declared the turning point had come through true warriors. No human challenged the claim. They watched, silent, letting the Empire bask in a victory they had not earned. That, too, was part of the plan. On Earth, analysts monitored Zarn transmissions. The Hive's collapse had severed over 60% of their outer colonies. Human operatives began feeding subtle tactical advice to Empire commanders. Small changes that resulted in enormous advantages, suggestions made quietly through back channels. Officially, humans were still uninvolved in direct conflict. Unofficially, they were shaping its outcome. Captain Alira Voss returned to Earth under full blackout protocols. No debrief. No medals. Her extraction pod was recovered from orbit without alerting orbital traffic. She walked through a secure corridor, unseen by the public. Her body still bruised and exhausted, but her mission complete. A doctor checked her vitals in silence. No names exchanged. She gave a single nod, then disappeared into the system once more. Her actions never made a news feed. Her file remained classified. But deep inside Strategic Command, a new tag was added beside her profile. Confirmed asset, Omega Tier. Priority retask pending. 3 days later, a second Zarn Hive vessel exploded from within under similar circumstances. Another malfunction. Another mysterious failure the Empire was quick to exploit. Their fleets began to win more often. The Senate boasted of renewed strength. In truth, humanity had begun a surgical campaign, removing the enemy's spine one vertebra at a time, letting others believe it was their own doing. Kale Tor's rhetoric shifted. He no longer spoke of human cowardice. Instead, he praised unity among species. He never admitted fault. He didn't need to. The absence of further insults said enough. In his private quarters, though, he received a simple message. An anonymous data burst showing a heat map of the Zarn flagship during the relay explosion. It tracked a single infiltrator. Not a Vagari. Not his kind. No threat. No explanation. Just a signature. A red fingerprint overlaid with a human military code. He stared at it for a long time, jaw tight, before deleting the file. In the weeks that followed, Earth continued to send humanitarian aid, strategic insights, and seemingly benign technology updates to allied worlds. No one questioned their generosity. No one connected it to the sudden efficiency of the war effort. Humans kept smiling, listening, helping. But behind the smiles, operations like Widow grew. Not in numbers, but in precision. Each action was deliberate. Each enemy strike anticipated. The Empire began to realize that their newfound momentum wasn't luck. It was design. Humanity's design. And still, the humans never asked for recognition. Back in a sealed underground vault, Captain Alira stood before a new mission display. Different coordinates, different species, different threat, but the same purpose. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The handler simply said, "Green light confirmed." She turned, suited up, and disappeared into the next war that no one would know she fought. One woman, one mission, one quiet victory after another. Humanity wasn't just fighting the war. They were rewriting how it was won.